Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show here on Channel 1 Television. On The Point of View, we pick the right topics, get the right guests, and ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. We have a big show tonight because we're asking the question, is it time to privatize ECG? The power distribution company has gone through a lot of issues. They are accused of mismanagement and financial bad governance, leading to technical, commercial, and collection losses to close to 40%. We're also told that the company loses $65 million every month due to its revenue shortfall. So tonight we'll be asking, is it time to privatize ECG, or are we just giving the company a bad name in order to hang it? We'll be right back with some interesting interviews and questions. Stay with us.
Fire pomudi ni agobio Ghana fueni age efri say ya your local spices na ya frafra dia ya sankofa natural spice
me de go me jollof mu ni mi sti wa hodoma e ma ne dance
Stanley the barbecue the go on
sankofa natural spice and one you use 100% natural said the happen
Adofo mamunye huge mistake sankofa natural spices
Here's Kwame and Yao. After hours of planning, both have locked in the same perfect multi-bet. Big win for United, over 1.5. And both teams to score in the London Derby. But who could have picked Leicester over City? Or a high-scoring game at the Bridge? There's nothing worse than having your perfect multi-bet missing. But there's nothing better than having it saved. Bet saver, win, even if your bet misses.
Welcome back. So tonight we are inquiring into the state of ECG and asking whether it's time it is privatized. Now, we have a very interesting panel. We'll speak to a man who's on the committee that the president put together to see through the transition and make sure the lights are on. We'll also speak to the former managing director of ECG. He's joining us in here, plus some people from civil society and some of the workers who are opposed to the privatization. But let's backtrack and start even before President Mahama was sworn in. In one of his early meetings around 16th December, after having won the election, he met a group of Americans, particularly from the side of the World Bank, and he spoke about the challenges facing ECG and why a private sector participation would be crucial. Here are highlights of what the president has been saying about ECG.
You can't run an electricity utility and make 40% commercial and technical losses and continue to think that you have a viable business. And so something must give in that sector. And that's why I've said that we are looking at introducing private sector participation. If you remember, under the Millennium Challenge Compact, we had agreed that in the last portion of the distribution, billing and metering, we're going to introduce private sector participation. And so I remember I signed the contract eventually, the compact, and we started the whole process with improving the national grid with the bulk supply points, the BSPs and all that. But there was also a component for private sector participation in billing and metering. And so the new government took over, and that's when the whole PDS saga happened.
So that was President John Dramani Mahama speaking to the leaders of the power sector who met him even before officially taking over. He subsequently formed a committee, an interim committee, to help avert a power crisis. Now, the nominee for Minister for Energy, John Abdullah Jinapo, has also reiterated the need for a private sector participation. He was questioned during his vetting a couple of days ago, and he affirmed the president's position and says this government believes that there has to be private sector participation in ECG. Here are highlights of what he said.
Honorable nominee, Listening to your answer to Dr. Kabiru's question, the impression you create on our minds is that you are not against the privatization of ECG. From what you said, you are against the PDS in terms of the approach. So can you tell us then whether your government is for the privatization, the full privatization of ECG?
We believe that they should be. Go ahead. Thank you, Chairman. We believe there should be private sector participation. What we intend to do is to form a 7-member committee chaired by technical experts, legal experts, financial experts, and some industry players, and even somebody from the consumer side. What we want them to do is to get us a framework, looking at best practices. Would a concession approach work or a full privatization work? We will stay off as politicians, let them get a framework in a more transparent, open, frank manner. Then when we get a buy-in of Ghanaians, then we can set the standards using an RFQ, an RFP, and then a competitive tender process.
For Minister for Energy. So the president is clear, the minister is clear. Now let me speak to a man who's part of the committee the president put together in those meetings with power sector leaders to basically steer the affairs of the power sector before fully the minister takes over. He's called Honorable Edward Bauer. He used to be MP. He's actually a member of the 8th Parliament. Edward Bauer, MP for Bongo. Now, I won't say not employed, but he clearly looks busy with the work he's doing. I also have Mr. Timothy Nyame, who's joined us. He's from the Public Utility Workers Union. I'll speak to him shortly, as well as the former MD of ECG, Mr. Samuel Dubik Mahama. But Mr. Bauer, so thanks for joining us. The president seems very clear that private sector participation in ECG has to happen. Can you affirm this and give us some more context to why both the president and the minister designate are so clear that ECG needs a private sector participant?
So first, let's put this within proper context. You recall that in the last government of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, in fact, it started somewhere in Nelson's own and it moves into John Mahama's government. When the Compact 1 completed, the one that brought about the N1 construction, Ghana's performance gave us an opportunity to tap into the Compact 2. And so on the strength of that, Ghana also realizing that, look, energy was very critical to our economy, the growth of our economy. It was important to find a way of ensuring that it was efficient, that it provides the services that businesses and homes will need to be able to strive. But unfortunately, we had also come to realize that if you look at the 3 main functional zones of the power subsector, generation, transmission, and distribution. The distribution end, which was basically ECG, and then that of NEDCO, were the weakest link. Why do I say so? I say so because of the fact that in all the things that we do, whether it is fuel from the oil fields, whether it is the transmission of the energy that has been generated by the generators and transmitted to the ECG, they interface with the public. And because they interface with the public, they will have to account for all the inputs that ended up getting you the light at CTFM or getting the light in my home. And so if they are efficient, then what then happens is that all the collections and other things, when they sell, if they can account for the power, they can then pay or maybe settle the players in the upstream sector. But unfortunately, we had realized that ECG was not particularly efficient in that regard. So the government decided to say, look, we will take advantage of it and particularly get involved mainly at the distribution end. So that's how the two projects, if you recall, if you go back and look at the compact, you see that there were some two major projects. They call them the technical and operational turnaround project for ECG, and the same thing for that of NEDCO. By the end of the day, we then settled on an ECG as a medium, because if you look at the catchment and the customer base, they take care of a greater part of the population of Ghana. Again, it is also put within the context of what we call the power sector reforms. In the power sector reforms, we had which was sponsored by the Bank of Ghana anyway. World Bank anyway. It was to see how private sector could play a role in our powers, in our electricity industry. So that informed even Gridco, which is now the transmitter. You know, Gridco used to be part of VRA. That informed the decoupling of Gridco as a transmitter, a national transmitter, from that of VRA. So that VRA then could be a player within the upstream sector with private sector players. Because, for example, assuming that VRA were to be the transmitter, at the same time a competitor would say Asobi, there will be unfair treatment of these other players. And so we felt that there must be an independent player who will fill the various power that has been generated based on economic basis, and then to be able to take them to the distributor. So this has a history. There's a context to it. Now, Bernard, you and I also do know very clearly that to a very large extent, if you look at the power sector in terms of the services that we provide to the general public, if you were to go engage the level of satisfaction of customers, they will tell you very clearly that the challenge they have is with ECG. Part of it may be true, part may be just because of the fact that they interface with the public, because VRA does not interface with them. So the people who interface are the people they think they want. So on the strength of that, we felt that, look, one, we needed to reduce the inefficiency within the ECG. How could we do that? We need to be able to replace most of the obsolete equipment. Now, government readily does not have that because there are other competing needs, whether hospital, roads, and what have you. And so government felt that, look, it is possible to leverage private sector capital to see how we can replace the obsolete equipment and other things within ECG just to make it efficient. That's one. Two, we can leverage on private sector expertise in trying to ensure that we run the company very well. So this was what informed the whole idea. So what His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is doing now is just a continuation of what he believed in. That, look, we needed to make ECG very efficient. And Bernard, before even just I come in case otherwise people want to talk. In July last year, when we engaged all the players within the energy sector, everybody pointed to ECG. And I'll tell you, for example, we met the upstream players. I'm talking about the upstream players in the oil industry. So we are talking about the ENIs and what have you, the Talos and what have you. All of them pointed to ECG. Why? The reason is because they produce gas. They give it to Government of Ghana. Government of Ghana processes it and other things, and they give it to you. And remember that fuel is a pass-through cost. So if you look at PRC, when they do the tariffs, fuel is accounted for. So they look at the price for fuel. And so when I go to buy power, in essence, I have paid for the fuel as part of the component that generated the power for me. And so all of them said that, look, the reason why we are not being paid as even suppliers of gas or suppliers of the fuel is because ECG cannot account for the final product that is sold to the consumer. So they pointed up to that. If you talk to IPPs, they all point to ECG. So we realized that that was the baby that needed to be resolved. And we think that based on the competing needs, we need to take advantage of private sector and see how we can leverage both capital and expertise to be able to do
so that's very clear. Private sector capital, because ECG needs retooling to make it more efficient. Private sector expertise, fair enough. Let's find out from Mr. Timothy Nyame why the workers, or at least the staff of ECG who he represents, are not happy. Mr. Nyame, thanks for joining us again. So you are from the Public Utility Workers Union, and my understanding is that you are opposed to, is it privatization of ECG or any form of private participation? If you just clarify, Mr. Nyame, the position of the pool on this.
In fact, we issued a press statement on the 13th of January, congratulating his president, the president, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, on the assumption of office, and we also saw interested parties. So for us, we are not surprised that the issue of privatization of ECG has come into force, and for this up for discussion. as he said, that His Excellency John Mahama's time, the previous time, there were issues that were under discussion in terms of how best we can manage ECG. And those alternatives, we stated it when we presented a press release in congratulating. We said that our stand, our position as POO, when it comes to privatization of ECG, still remain the same. And those options were actually spelled out. And we reserve those options down with the expectation that with time, stakeholders will be engaged, of which POO I know will also not be left out. So, but it has come up. And my brother is stating here that there's inefficiency in ECG. And the only way to solve the inefficiency is to infuse private capital. We are not totally against privatization of ECG, but the mode or the tangent they want to go is what we have problem with. And as I said, as time goes on, we'll be able to state our position when it comes to privatization of ECG. He's saying that there's inefficiency, and he went on to say that the thing need capital infusion. So when you are talking of inefficiency, is it the human? Is it the human being who are inefficient or management are inefficient? But so you can quickly identify that. You can quickly realize that is the equipment, obsolete equipment, that may be something that is hindering the organization. So let us all come together and find the solution to the solution of the problem, rather than saying that we want to diversify and give it to transparent tendering. So as much as we are not against private sector participation, we should take pragmatic steps to make sure that we go through proper means of doing the privatization.
All right, so now I think the position is now you're saying you are not against private sector participation necessarily, but that the mode is what you're
not against private sector.
So let me. So you are saying that they are set under
and also Bernard.
Hold on. Let me ask the question. You are saying under some conditions you may accept private sector participation. Is that what you're saying?
Very well.
Good.
Very well.
So under which conditions would you accept a private sector participation, and under which conditions would you not?
So Bernard, we are, as I said, we are preparing a position paper on that, and
okay, it
is not prudent for us to come out with that position.
Fair enough.
As time goes on, we'll clearly come out. But if they will remember, there were those certain conditions were also those processes were actually.
All right. So this is a good start. Let me talk to Nana Moisi briefly. Then I will come in to speak to Mr. Dubik Mahama, who is the immediate past ECG MD. He resigned on the 25th of September, so he's been free for at least 4 months. Nana Moisi, the fourth, I believe it is. Nana, thank you so much for joining us from the IES. The president, the nominee for energy, and the rep on the committee have all said ECG is the weak link. They need capital injection, and they also need expertise from the private sector. Does the IES agree with them that that's the way to go to save the power sector?
Bernard, it is Nana Moisi the seventh.
The seventh, okay. Forgive.
So by the point of correction there.
Thank you.
To the substantive matter, the IES, to go straight forward, is not against privatization of ECG. Support fully the bringing in private partners to support the distribution leg of the ECG's work, particularly the revenue collection side. And so we are firmly in support of what government wants to do. We've been in support for many years. Even while we're doing the PDS ECG concession model, we were in support because we clearly understood that the problem of the sector lies squarely with the distribution segment of the value chain. if you take away the inefficiencies, invest more in the business of distribution, we are sure that our technical and commercial losses will be reduced drastically. The PRC tells us that in some months, the ECG is unable to collect close to 50% of their expected revenue. No business will survive if this is the situation. And so we support the idea that we need private sector funding, we need private sector expertise, and we need the technology that will be good enough to change the narratives of ECG.
Wonderful. I will take a short break. When I come back, I will get the view of the horse's own mouth, as they say. He's been running ECG for at least a couple of years. Does he agree that private sector participation or privatization is inevitable? The point of view tonight is looking at this question. Is it time we privatized or brought private people in to ECG? Stay with us.
Are you tired of roaming for your medications and can't find them? Do you want to speak to a pharmacist or simply need privacy when buying your medications? Do you want your drugs to be delivered to you at the comfort of your home or office? Then it's time to download the DrugNet app, spelled DRUGNET, from the Play Store or App Store to enjoy total convenience. Use DrugNet, your multiple award-winning online pharmacy, for prompt delivery of all your medications. For further inquiries on DrugNet, call 0593-159-139 or 0501-646-496. And remember, we also accept all private health insurance cards. DrugNet, your #1 online pharmacy.
Life is a celebration of moments. Big and small.
The sun is scorching, I'm feeling the heat.
With Piva Drink, every moment becomes a refreshing celebration. From the beach to your home, in every corner of your world, Piva Drink adds a burst of refreshment.
Give me Piva cocktail and tangerine.
Celebrate every moment with Piva Drink. Refreshment for every occasion. Piva Drink, a taste you will love.
P for Piva.
This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome back. So the point of view tonight has just one question to answer, but we are talking to 4 people about it. Is it time we privatize ECG, or is it time we brought private participants into the distribution side of the power sector? In studio, I have Samuel Dubik Mahama, immediate past MD of ECG. I also have Nana Mwisi, the 7th of IES. I have Honorable Edward Bawa, former MP for Bongo, who is a member of the transition committee the president put in place to oversee the power sector before the minister substantially takes his position. And I also have Enes Nyame, who is one of the lead figures at the pool, who opposes. So from the positions I see, Mr. Bawa and Nana have no problem with privatization or private sector participation. Mr. Nyame says in principle they don't necessarily disagree, but they have many problems with the way it's being gone about. So let me start with you. It looks like this past 2 weeks, everybody has been saying ECG is the bad guy. The president made reference to 40% ATC and Cs.
Yeah.
The nominee repeated the 40% that your technical, commercial, and collection losses are close to 40%. We've seen documents that suggest it's around 37%.
Yeah.
But still, first, and then 2 reasons are given for the need for private sector participation. We need capital injection, of which they believe is the private sector that can do this, to make the company change its obsolete equipment. And then we also need private sector expertise, and they cite PDS as an example. That's a lot to ask in one question. But preliminarily, do you understand where the president and the minister designates are coming from?
I do understand where they are coming from, but the 40% that's been brandished around is not a fair description of the losses. The document that you purportedly cited, you'd have realized that it gave a base of 26% to 37%.
Yes.
That's because within the year of 2023, there was change management being implemented. So yes, collections went down. But the funny thing is that year too, they collected more than 14 billion from the previous year. The previous year, which said from that audit report, the system loss audit, that put the company at 26% system losses, the total ATC&C at 26%. That year was just 8 billion.
Yeah.
But in the following year, when the company collected about 14 billion, the company still had what?
37%.
Is ranging between 26 to 37.
Yes.
Another reason why is that the electricity you sell in November, December, you collect that money in January and what? February. So it's if you realize, that's why the document gave a range. Because until you do that settlement, you cannot actually determine how perfect the collection was for the previous year.
Okay.
So I would beg that before anybody jumps to the conclusion of 40% or 30-something%, let's do that exercise and conclude on that part first. Now, 2, I do admit that there are a few inefficiencies in the company. And in the same way, there are a few efficiencies in the company. Now, before you do any private sector participation, what are the benchmarks? Let's not forget, there's already private sector participation in ECG.
At which point?
At the metering point, under the loss reduction program. Under this program, ECG has moved from its previous position where it used to look for large sums of money to go purchase meters and come and install. That was one thing I decided to change when I became managing director, and I had a discussion with the board, was that looking for cash or capital to go purchase meters to come in for usage doesn't make sense. Why don't we get all these metering companies and tell everybody to have a factory in the country? Based on that, we now have about 7 metering companies that do have factories in Ghana. Now, what we then did was to give them a locality where they had to install their meters.
Okay.
When you install, the marginal revenue increment from that month is what is used to pay you. That was the exercise, and that is private sector participation. And if you do the math very well, you realize that it saved us a lot, more than almost 50% in how much you now had to go and borrow, all those administrative costs. Now, if you want to do like what Nana was saying, Nana said in the last mile, before you even touch something like that, you have to meter, your boundary metering must be set. The boundary metering is not done. I do know that the regional boundary metering is done. The district boundary metering is not complete yet. ECG's districts are different from the normal country's district allocations. My question is this: if we are to meter all of these districts, okay, and have a boundary where we say, okay, we gave this distribution transformer X boxes of electricity, did you collect everything in full? When you collect everything in full, will ECG still be able to pay to pay the IPPs? My answer will be no. Because
so the problem is not limited to that.
It's not limited to that at all.
So in your view, what is the main problem that ECG that needs to be solved for ECG?
The first one is Forex. And you remember my last interview with you. I didn't miss my words on that. Look, you buy the electricity in dollars, you come and sell it in cedis, and you go and look for the requisite dollars to go and pay. At the minister's vetting, he admitted to the whole country that now ECG is collecting 1.3 billion. When I took office, ECG was languishing around 400 to 450. You can't say that tariff has gone up by 100% in that particular year of 2023 for us to raise about 14 billion. So now the conversation is this: if at this point in time 1.3 billion, if you are going to look for USD to pay the IPP, will the money be enough to pay the whole value chain? Before you even go looking at that, the biggest question is, what are the overhead costs of the day-to-day running of the, let's say, forgive my expression, the animal called ECG? Where you have salaries, you have maintenance on a daily basis, you have fuel, you have trucks.
So let's get it straight. He said you collect 1.3 billion.
Yes.
Only 800 million gets into the cash waterfall.
Yes.
And he says some 400 to 500, he's not sure where it goes. And I think somebody attributed that to some agreement you had signed.
No, it's not about agreement.
So that
400, if you can.
But it's correct that only 800 gets into the cash waterfall.
Sometimes even less.
And what accounts for the variance?
Because of the monthly running cost. ECG needs about 600 million a month to run.
Running cost?
Running cost alone.
Of what, staff or what?
Staff, fuel, trucks, vehicle maintenance. The whole apparatus called ECG needs about between 500 to 600 million to be able to run efficiently on a monthly level. So now you look at that and then you say, okay, there's waste. Let's go in there and cut waste. I am willing for everybody to take a piece of paper with ECG, take a closer look at it and say, okay, this is waste, cut it. Maybe.
But the president mentioned procurement issues. Indeed, in October last year, 14 CSOs sued you for what they call procurement abuses. The nominee also mentioned over 200 containers at the port, which he believes are part of the challenges of your procurement approach.
Bernard,
and what it costs. So if you can do the procurement point for me.
So let me deal with the procurement point. ECG is a limited liability company. There are court decisions that has either exempts ECG from Public Procurement Act. Fine. ECG doesn't just procure, they have a procurement manual. This manual is done based on engineering pricing. There's a whole formula. And I would entreat everybody to actually speak to the ECG procurement department, the engineering directorate, and the operations directorate. They'll walk them through the formula. Now, ECG also used to enjoy some form of taxes at the port that allowed ECG to move the containers out. It was revoked. The moment it was revoked, this is a company that on a monthly basis, cash alone to come out to go and pay for containers to bring them out, is going to be difficult. So under my tenure, we came up with a strategy where, if you remember, every single time I told you that government was fully paid, it was because it was, for me, it was a set-off. All government agencies, critical agencies that were not paying, we wrote a lovely letter, put it, attached their entire bills, and put it towards our taxes at GRA.
For an exchange?
Yeah, for an
barter
exchange.
Trade.
Yeah, barter trade.
Did they agree?
They agreed. They did the first couple of them, which created some ease and actually helped to fix ECG's balance sheet very well. Look, there needs to be a holistic conversation about the industry. You privatizing or private sector participation, I can promise you today that if we do only that, we will still be back at this conversation in
Let me do one last thing before I come back to the panel. The nominee also said that he's reliably informed that there are 5.2 million meters, of which 4.8 million are functional. And he said an astronomical 3 million are either not working well or malfunctioning or have a challenge. That's almost 63% of active meters having a challenge. Now,
that he has vindicated me because we had this conversation the last time I was here.
So are you saying he was referring to historical data or current data?
No, it's current data.
So then that's mismanagement.
It's not mismanagement. Now let me point out
62% of the meters are not working.
Now let me point out something to you. This is one thing everybody does not realize. You know that meters have a lifespan. Prepaid meters have a lifespan.
Well, you are the one supposed to know.
Yes, they have a 10 to 15 year lifespan that they have to be replaced. When government of Ghana, we went on that, prepaid metering excursion, as I would say. The then government was of this ambition that they were going to look for a huge sum of money for ECG to replace all meters to prepaid. But 50% of ECG's meters are prepaid and the other 50 are postpaid. Now, you have meters that were installed during President Kufuor's tenure. Okay? These meters are non-smart. These meters, now if you shoot the new and current or the recent tariff to the meter, what then happens? It's not going to receive it. So you have people right now that are enjoying tariff from 2007 or 2008. That when you send the tariff out,
so why haven't you replaced those meters?
It's capital injection. That's why we
need a private sector.
So that's why we came up with it in a different way. Yes, it's true. You do need some form of private capital injection.
But if after your private sector involvement, you still have 3 million meters, 62% of the meters not working.
It's about speed. When I took office, we were doing about 2,000 meters a month. Last I checked, when I was leaving office, we were doing about 100,000 meters a month in replacement because the system had now picked up. if they are continuing on that trajectory with the private metering companies providing the meters and they are moving with that same thing, they should be able to hit
Let me
some
take
good numbers
comments
soon.
from the panel. Let me start with Nana Moisi before I come to Bawa. Nana, since I gave you only one question, Mr. Mahama is defending his tenure quite stridently, and he believes that there's already private participation, and that if what he's put in place continues, you don't even need any new private sector anything. Just continue with the reforms. As an energy sector think tank, are you convinced that the plan of action his team put in place would preclude the need for a full privatization? Nana?
Well, Bernard, I think that almost all panel members have agreed that private sector participation is critical at this moment, looking at the level of capital injection that we are looking for. So that's one. Unfortunately, the approval head, or Mr. Nyame, couldn't tell us why they are against the private sector participation. They say they are now doing a paper, and so they will come out with that. If you don't have a paper, then I will ask that they forever hold their peace until they know why they don't want it. You can't say you don't want it when you don't know the reason for which you don't want it. If the way they go about it, tell us which way they are going about it that you don't like, then we'll work at it. And it's something the minister designate has accepted, that they want to take this exercise in a transparent manner, in a more involving manner to achieve the results. The kind of model to use has not been laid out. And so it's for a committee and stakeholders like Mr. Nyame, Pugu, IES, and everybody to contribute to it when it comes up. The next is that Mr. Dubik, yes, it is his right to defend his work. In fact, you can't take that away from him. Yet he concedes that there must be some private sector involvement or private an enhanced one. Yes, I support him as well. If there's already an existing structure that mandates other people to put in the metering and also benefit from same if they get the right benchmark results, it is good. Yet we have problem. Do we look at these people and ask them exactly what they are doing and why we still have the challenges? Bernard, in 2015, 2016, I had a meter, and I tell you 2 meters in my house. They were as smart as anything I can tell. It could communicate to me twice a day, tell me how much power consumed and how much is left. If you dare go closer to that meter, it signals to a central command, and you can have visits at any time in your home. This is far back 2015, 10 years on. We are struggling. And I've mentioned severally that I know of meters, and I talk of smart meters in my house, or no, prepaid meters in my neighborhood that have not bought credits for many months, yet they have power. And the minister came out clear telling us how many of the meters we have in the system that are functioning right. It means for those that are not functioning right, this is revenue leakages. If these people that you mentioned, Mr. Vic mentioned that they have been given some mandate to install meters and ensure they work properly. If they are in the system and they are part of these leakages, then of course we need a whole investigation or audit into the metering segment. But for us at IES, we fully admit that the problem lies squarely with the ECG. And if Mr. Dubik is saying that they still have a problem with Forex, then of course we can look at it. Bernard, on each month, every 3 months, PRC fixes a new tariff for us. And they tell us that it reflects both economic indices as well as world price, developments. They will mention.
But we both know why. We both know that's not true, because I read an article by Elikli Mapetogbo. This was last quarter. He says the problem ECG faces is that PURC's tariff is always below the market, sometimes $1.5 per kilowatt hour, and you cannot run an operation.
Exactly where I'm coming to, Bernard.
Okay, go on.
I am coming to that segment.
Okay.
If we have such a situation, then we have to work with the PRC to give a more cost-reflective tariff, because that means that they have been lying to us all this while. They tell us they take into consideration the the type of fuel that we're using for the next 3 months? Are we going to be more dependent on hydro and what percentage, on thermal, what percentage? They use it as one of the variables. They also tell us that they use the average weighted cost of fuel or so. They tell us that compensation is made for in the tariff considering inflation and cedi depreciation. If it's not really well done, then of course we have a very weak PRC. And so, yes, I will agree to this extent. If you are giving me references, then we should also interrogate the PRC's own tariff review segment to also support. Other than that, like Mr. Dubik saying, it will be incomplete if we don't also consider the forest elements of the equation.
Thank you. Let me talk to Mr. Bauer. Mr. Bauer, the government is not very clear on the approach it would use. The minister nominee is saying private sector participation, and that could mean anything. We are already told by Mr. Dubik that there's already private sector at the metering level. Why can't we be a bit more definite about, because we know what PDS did. PDS was very clear in what they were doing. So why is the government still diffident on the approach and the type of privatization it wants to do?
I believe that this discussion is purely based on trying to inform how the best path to chart. And so these are all, he's sharing his experience with us as to what they did at the place. But look, see, the two main indicators of the shortcomings of the ECG is one, quality of service. And the second one is the aggregate technical commercial and then aggregate technical commercial and collection losses that we have, the ATTSC. So we all do know that these are the two main things. Mr. Dubik tries to make the point and say, and I've had the cause to have an exchange with him at the committee meet, where the argument has been made that, look, if you look at the quantums in terms of the revenues deflating from 2022 that he talks about, and says that now they moved from 400 and something to now the minister himself admitted it's about 1.3 billion. But one thing Mr. Dubik is not also addressing very seriously is the fact that, yes, he talked about the tariff, but the tariff was not just a small thing. The tariff between 2022 and at the time he was leaving office was about incremental, and the cumulative increment, if you do the calculation, it's about 104.93%. That is the increment you have had. So just taking the quantums in terms of revenue, the revenue may not necessarily be too reflective of that. But I admit that, look, the issue he talks about forex losses is key, because if at the end of the day, for example, you have a situation where the IPPs will invoice you in dollars, meanwhile you are selling the power in cedis. So the losses, the liabilities, somebody has to bear the liabilities. Yes, I do agree that as per if you look at the tariff structure that have come and we have dealt with, there's always the quarterly adjustment before the 4-year major tariff review. So within the quarterly adjustment, forex loss, or maybe the forex exchange rate is also always one of a factor. But I think that I do concede, and indeed, if you go back and look at our manifesto, we have indicated that we need to take a second look even at the whole tariff structure. We need to take a second look at the tariff structure because, one, it is unfair on ECG in any case. For example, we tell ECG, make sure that you have you engage generators to have a reserve of about 18%. The reserve of about 18% comes in as a take-or-pay arrangement. Who takes up that liability? Should it be in the books of ECG? These are all conversations we can have, so we can look at it as a holistic thing. But to come back to the main question you're asking me as to how definitely we are not definite. Look, we have stated very clearly. We had ideas as to what we were going to do in 2015-16 when we talked about the whole idea of the privatization. Let's admit that there have been some experiences that have been gotten as a result of the implementation of PDS. There are issues of, for example, the Power Utility Workers Union Pro, who, and I believe if you talk to them most often, apart from the love they have for the company, the issue of job security is something they will want to be discussing as part of the whole day. We need to know what type of participation are we looking at. Yes, we all do know that if you look at the area that is most critical within the the ECG center, is the retail functions of the particular the company as to how those power is sold, how it is done, how monies are received. Yes, there have been boundary meters that have been dealt with. We have done the original one, what do you call it? The district boundaries have been done. Even within the boundaries, you must find a way of doing the boundaries in such a way that they become commercially viable for somebody to buy into it. It is because the issue of a boundary is accountability. But at the same time, even before somebody decides that I want to partake in the retail end of the whole, power subsector business, he will want to know whether even the catchment area you have given to him or her, or as a company, or maybe as an individual, is something that is commercially viable and it is worth it. So these things are all things that will have to be dealt with. But I think that the reason why we have not been categorical is because, and go back to what the minister designate indicated, we will have to have a comprehensive engagement with the academia, with practitioners within the industry, with think tanks, with the media, with everybody. People have experienced ECG from different angles.
I see.
After that, we'll have a comprehensive roadmap and a strategy as to how this implementation will be done. The bigger and global idea is that we think that at one point or the other, private sector must play some role in ECG.
Okay.
How it is going to be done, how we are whether we are going to make it more indigenous in terms of investment, whether we are going to have foreign investment, all this is will be shaped up as we go on.
Thank you. I'll come back with a final comment when we return. This is the point of view tonight. We're asking, should ECG be privatized, or to what extent should private sector play a role in power distribution? We'll be right back.
Is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a ball now. Tell me, who's on the alarm now? I got a message when they put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got the power.
Tank 300, where power meets elegance. Call us on 0501 772222 or 0501 773333.
Here's Kwame and Yao. After hours of planning, both have locked in the same perfect multi-bet. Big win for United, over 1.5. And both teams to score in the London Derby. But who could have picked Leicester over City? Or a high-scoring game at the Bridge? There's nothing worse than having your perfect multi-bet missing. But there's nothing better than having it saved. Bet Saver. Win, even if your bet misses.
Welcome back. So tonight it's a big debate in studio. Samuel Dubik Mahama, immediate past ECG MD. We also have Edward Bauer, who is a member of the committee the president put in place to prevent Dumso. This committee was set up very recently. We also have Nana Mwesi, the 7th, who's the head of the IES, Institute of Energy Security, and also have Mr. Timothy Nyame from the POO, who are opposed to privatization, but we'll send the paper soon. Mr. Mahama, it seems to me as if you are here to defend your tenure of ECG, and whilst that is great, it seems to me as if everybody on the committee agrees that private sector has to play a bigger role in ECG, and everybody seems to agree that ECG is the weak link in the power sector. Can you concede these two final points, that private sector needs a bigger role and ECG is the weak link in the power sector?
I would not consider ECG is the weak link.
You will not?
No, I would, but I can see my elder brother still on the screen.
Yes, Bauer.
Yeah, right. Today you have to praise me because you said the tariff increment as at 2024 was 100 and something percent. We are talking about 2023. What was the percentage? we had increased revenue. I'm not defending my position. I just want you to clap for me and then we'll move on. Now, my thing is this: there's a misconception out there, and when they went for the Doomso meeting, Gridco put a document out that said we needed 4,400 something megawatts, right? If Edward was there, so maybe he can confirm that. When you hear that 4,000 for all of that, what comes to your mind? You think it's ECG, not so? It's not ECG. It is not. ECG has been turned into the whipping boy. ECG's peak consumption is 2,500. Let's do the calculation in context of 2,005 that ECG took. How much of that did they use? How much of that, what do you call it? How much of that?
I thought demand.
Yes, ECG's peak demand. You know, ECG is Southern Ghana.
So Gridco claimed that the demand was 4,000 what?
That is not ECG's demand. That is national.
So how
there are other players in the game.
I get it. So that 4,000 something, ECG only takes
2,500.
So Netco takes some.
Netco takes some. DRA has its own customers that they feed. There are other people who have customers that they feed within the value chain. ECG is 2.5. This is why I'm saying, if we want to drill down on the matter, let's drill down on the matter. Let's fix the problem at source. And I like what my elder brother Edward said. It's not about me defending my position. No. If that was the point, I wouldn't have come on the show. You remember the conversation we had that brought me here. It is now time for an independent market operator. This country needs what is called an independent market operator. This person is an unbiased umpire who sits there, who directs traffic of the energy that comes in. What if government is to subsidize fuel for ECG customers? What if government subsidize ECG fuel and then the fuel goes to feed a different person and that money goes to a different entity?
Like Gridco or VRA?
Fine, you can. It is possible. But if the reconciliation at the end of the year is done and there's a loss to ECG in a certain amount, how does ECG recoup that? What are the parameters concerning that? We need an independent market operator. That is the losses start from the top. You know,
so suggesting that VRA who sell power directly to some of their customers may also be making losses.
Yes.
But it doesn't get talked about because they are seen as the power generator.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I like what he's saying, and I would love for us to have it's about a holistic conversation. Look, the business model, by and large, and I like he says they are changing the tariff, is wrong. Look, you can say you are adjusting tariff in 3 months, okay? You are doing quarterly adjustment. By the time you come and do the quarterly adjustment, the tariff, the forex never goes down. So within a short space of time, look, our 2022 profit and loss was about 10.5 billion. 8.5 billion was forex loss. So your head is down, you are working. By the time you raise your hand, by not your
fault.
So
you're saying forex loss is about 80% of your losses. It's higher than...
That is profit and loss accounting.
It's higher than revenue loss from collection.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Because as I said, the money is the PPAs are in dollars.
So let me change this. If you bring a private owner of ECG and you don't change the revenue structure, they will still make losses.
Of course, because you are looking for money to pay the IPP. Let me take you back. The reason why the IPPs were saying that they were comfortable was when we renegotiated with them and came up with fixed flat rates. Between a certain period, the forex was stable. So when the revenue was going up, we were able to meet the requisite amounts of monies that they were requesting for, which amounted to, I think, about almost $48 million.
Wow.
There was enough cash coming in for us to be able to take care of that. But when forex started going up, we could not, what do you call it? And, you know, I'm very happy he speaks about PURC. Look, PURC can adjust the tariff all they want. But the truth of the matter is that the reality is on the ground. In Uganda, when they did the privatization model, do you know what they do with their bills? The forex is determined that week. So on your bill, when you are going to pay, the forex rate is attached to your electricity bill. Can we do that here?
Wow. So are they billed in dollars?
So technically they are billed in dollars. In Liberia it's the same. They are billed in dollars. But in Ghana, you are rather playing catch up. So there's an adjustment today of 2 or 3%. It's supposed to cover you. But is it covering what you have lost, or is it covering you for what you are about to lose? Are you getting my point? So I do agree with Edward when he says, when he says the tariff structure has to be looked at. It's a business. And now the whole conversation is this. If you have IPPs that we have take or pay arrangements with them, and all these take or pay arrangements, all of them are on the head of ECG. Meanwhile, ECG is using only 2,500 at peak. Then there is a huge conversation that needs to be had. It's not 4,000, and I say it on record. ECG doesn't use all that 4,400. So sometimes the big question in the room is, why is ECG saddled with the fuel purchase for 4,000 and not for 2,500?
Wow.
We should look at ECG in terms of what ECG has been set up to do. And do not forget, fuel is a pass-through cost. So government technically is supposed to subsidize. So if government is paying attention only to ECG for 2,500, the conversation will be different. Now again, if I'm to play the devil's advocate to say I'm assisting Mr. Nyame, I'll say this. How much is it to capitalize a bank in Ghana now? It's 400 million, not so? If ECG is making 1.3, ECG can capitalize 3 banks in the Republic.
If it doesn't do anything else.
Yes, but you can, if government wants
to help. But that's just revenue.
But wait,
you haven't put cost in there.
No. If government, this you are coming up with a formula. If government wants to help, okay? If government is to take up maybe a payment of IPPs or other costs for about 3 months, you can have to do what they call a bridge finance. There is no utility CEO that I have met since I became ECG MD that spends from hand to pocket. Now we went to the IMF and agreed to a formula which I always oppose to it. Concentration risk. Why should we have one single collection account? So we have now agreed to the Gadgetsberg approach of development. Everything comes into one basket, then we share it, coins, then everybody goes back. Meanwhile, guess what? If you put 1.3 billion in a bank, you should be able to borrow against that.
So you don't like the cash waterfall mechanism?
I'm not saying I don't like it. I am saying it has to be revised. It should be a financial model, not a
pool of money
just to, because you're not going to get its full effect. If I have 1.3 and I share 1.3, what have I done? Nothing. But if I have 1.3 lying down and I can borrow against that 1.3, or there's a bridge finance that allows you at the end of the year, 2 or 3 months to replenish what you took, you'll be able to pay the IPPs.
Well done.
You understand?
Yeah.
And then also have enough. I think there are financial models that we need to look at what's happening outside there. First of all, as for the metering, we cannot run away from it because that's the only way you can get your money. Now we need to look at the business model in context of how much ECG alone actually consumes in a month, both off peak and peak.
Okay.
Now there are other pragmatic going green steps that we could do.
Okay.
That we need to look at, like the infusion of battery storage containers in our bulk supply points to limit the excess during the day.
We have run out of time, so I just have to thank you and my panel. I know Mr. Bao would have loved to say a few things, but for the want of okay, let me.
I quickly have something to say.
Yes, Mr. Nyame, let me take your closing comments.
From what Nana said, you know, and I didn't say we didn't have a position paper. It's just fair for us to meet the stakeholders to put our case before them before coming on air.
Okay.
That's why we made a press statement and congratulated His Excellency the President. We also said our position on the PSP, for that matter, transition of ECG still remain the same. And we said the position paper will be presented. Everything is there, and the respect we have for the stakeholders, we are not ready to actually come here and start staying.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Timothy.
Able to have the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Nyame. He is from the POO, Public Utility Workers Union. We also had...
I'm the General Secretary of Public Utilities Workers Union.
Wonderful. General Secretary of POO. We also had Nana Mwesi, the 7th CEO or Executive Director of the IES, which is Institute for Energy Security. Of course, Edward Bauer. And Edward is now working in the energy sector. We're not sure what post he will finally get. And I don't want to...
I pray he goes to sit at ECG.
Edward Bauer, will you be... I don't want to jinx it.
Public official refuses to comment.
Refuses to comment. But what are you doing now?
You didn't allow me to make my last statement.
Oh, no, because of... Okay, we'll make it in 30 seconds, sir.
Okay. We'll have another time, Bernard.
Yes, sir.
We'll have another time.
Yes, sir. Okay, I thought you would make it in 30 seconds, but you've relinquished, so thank you. Mr. Bauer, thank you as well, and Mr. Mahama, thank you for being on the show. and for your public service. Thanks for watching. That's all we have time for tonight's edition of The Point of View. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.